Hey y'all, it's your friendly neighborhood therapist, and I know it's late, but listen here. When I get inspired by something or think about something, I have to do it right then and there. That's just how I operate. So, anyway, I was over on my YouTube page, and there were two comments left on my most recent post. I typically share all my posts from TikTok to my YouTube page, but anyway, two comments on my post from today. So, one of them said something along the lines of, I don't think it's a good idea to make comparisons between the Jewish community and the black community, or another like that, something like that. Can't compare the two. But the other one actually explains exactly why you can compare the two. And that's the little deep dive I want to do tonight. I'm going to try to make it quick, but y'all know me. Now, anyway, so the reason why you really can compare is specifically because of who Adolf Hitler and the Nazis were inspired by. Let me give you a little lesson. So I pulled this up because I knew I had remembered learning it anyway, but the woman who made the comment on the post just sparked it, and I was like, let me just go on and give a full on lesson real quick. So, in 1935, Nazi Germany passed two radical discriminatory pieces of legislation, and guess what those pieces of legislation were inspired by? American laws, the Reich Citizenship Law and the Law for the Protection of German Blood and German Honor, and together these were known as the Nuremberg Laws, and they laid the legal groundwork for the persecution of Jewish people during the Holocaust and World War II. But when the Nazis set out to legally disenfranchise and discriminate against Jewish citizens, they did not just come up with those ideas out of their own minds or out of thin air. They actually, Hitler as well as other members of his party, closely studied the laws of the United States of America. And this is according to James Q. Whitman, who is the author of Hitler's American Model. So in this book, he says, America in the early 20th century was the leading racist jurisdiction in the world. He's a professor at Yale Law School, just in case y'all thought he didn't know what he was talking about. Nazi lawyers, as a result, were interested in looking very closely at and were ultimately influenced by American race law. In particular, Nazis admired the Jim Crow era laws that discriminated against black Americans and segregated them from white Americans, and they debated whether to introduce similar segregation in Germany. But they ultimately decided that what America was doing wasn't even far enough. One of the most striking Nazi views was that Jim Crow was a suitable racist program in the United States because American blacks were already oppressed and poor. But then in Germany, by contrast, where the Jewish population, as the Nazis imagined it, were rich and powerful, it was necessary to take more severe measures. And because of this, they were more interested in how the U.S. had designated Native Americans, Filipinos, and other groups as non citizens, even though they lived in the U.S. or its territories. These models influenced the citizenship portion of the Nuremberg Laws, which stripped Jewish Germans of their citizenship and classified them as nationals. Does any of this sound familiar with our current administration? I'm going to keep going. But a component of the Jim Crow era the Nazis did think they could translate into Germany were anti miscegenation laws, which prohibited interracial marriages in 30 of 48 states. America had by a wide margin the harshest law of this kind. In particular, some of the state laws threatened severe criminal punishment for interracial marriage, and that was something radical Nazis were very eager to do in Germany as well. The idea of banning Jewish and Aryan marriages presented the Nazis with a dilemma. How would they tell who was Jewish and who was not? After all, race and ethnic categories are socially constructed, and interracial relationships produce offspring who don't fall neatly into one box. Again, the Nazis looked to good old America. Connected with these anti miscegenation laws was a great deal of American jurisprudence on how to classify who belonged to which race. The controversial one-drop rules stipulated that anyone with any black ancestry was legally black and could not marry a white person. Laws also defined what made a person Asian or Native American in order to prevent these groups from marrying whites. Notably, though, Virginia had a Pocahontas exception for prominent white families who claimed to be descended from Pocahontas. The Nuremberg Laws, too, came up with a system of determining who belonged to what group, allowing the Nazis to criminalize marriage and sex between Jewish and Aryan people. Rather than adopting a one drop rule, the Nazis decreed that a Jewish person was anyone who had three or more Jewish grandparents, which means that American racial classification law was much harsher than anything the Nazis themselves were willing to introduce in Germany. And it should come as no surprise then that the Nazis weren't uniformly condemned in the US before the country entered the war. In the early 1930s, American eugenicists welcomed Nazi ideas about racial purity and republished their propaganda. American aviator Charles Lindbergh accepted a swastika medal from the Nazi Party in 1938. Now, once the United States entered the war, it took a decidedly anti Nazi stance. But black American troops noticed the similarities between the two countries and confronted them head on with a double V campaign. Its goal: victory abroad against the Axis powers and victory at home against Jim Crow. So, yeah, see, this is why most black folks and Jewish folks with sense, we are not against one another. We realize this history and this connection. And this is why I can make the statement I made in my last video comparing our groups and how we are treated and how Jewish people are a protected class while we are not. You see how that works when you understand history? You can't say that Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party literally used what America was doing to black Americans as their foundation, as their inspiration, and then say that I can't use the two to ask the question that I asked. So, yeah, if you didn't know that information, I hope you learned something this evening. And I hope you understand that even that situation is why we have remnants to this day. Let me remind y'all, you had a man stand up on national television in the United States and give a Nazi salute. You have things now that are very, very similar to that same propaganda that was used back then. But you want people to stop talking about it. Why? So it can repeat again? So we can make America great again? Was that the great era? Okay, listen, like I said, my intent is never to offend, it's to get you to think and to educate. So if you didn't know this, now you do. I hope y'all have a beautiful, wonderful rest of y'all evening, and I will holler at y'all later.